And we're back this week. So last week we kind of talked about how it was to be a younger sibling, being in the show.
I just want
you reminded me. That's what that face was. We're back, keeping it real, raw, and regular with the Fields girls.
Can we get a cut?
We don't cut. We know it's real, raw, and regular. There is no cuts.
This is my episode. Why would you ruin it with that terrible tagline? Real and regular. Okay. No, yeah, go ahead. Introduce me.
Okay. So, introduce me. So last week you kind of touched about being a younger sibling or in people's shadows, how you feel and the things to get out of that. This week we're talking about how it is to be a big sister. So I'm, like I said, asking her questions, and the answers that come out, maybe I'll be hearing for the first time. Don't disappoint.
Was there a question?
I said, how was it being a big sister to this cute?
No more questions, please. So no. Well, thanks for having me on your show, our show.
Yeah, it's ours.
But no, I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this, and I think that I've shared this recently more so with Brooklyn, and you gotta understand, right? Sometimes I forget that I'm 30 years old. I still feel like I'm 12 most of the time. I still act 12 most of the time. But growing up I'm an older sister. I'm the middle sister. I think that I also forget that I had that little sister mentality for some of the parts. I did get to go to a different high school than both of my older sisters, and I have two older sisters that were living in a different state, so never really had to walk in their shadow, and for the most part didn't have to walk in outside at school. I never had to walk in Brittany and Brian's shadow, but being an older sister, for the most part, was always amazing. Some of the things that I've told Brooklyn, and she talked a little bit last time about like having the chip on her shoulder, just like walking around feeling less than because she was B's little sister. But the truth is because we were always attached at the hip, right? We did everything together sports-wise. And as much as, friendships and speaking, she talked about my vocabulary a little bit and just being in front of the crowd and everyone knowing who I was. It was always awesome. I loved making friends with the people in band. Brooklyn did band. I loved being friends with the theater kids. I loved being friends with the athletes. I loved being friends with everyone, really. Nothing makes me happier than making someone else laugh and hearing that come out of their bodies. I think laughter, mine's pretty obnoxious, but it defines me a little bit. If you hear me laugh, I'm in the room. So I love that about myself, but being Brooklyn's older sister, there wasn't a lot that I wasn't able to do without her, right? She had mentioned Senior Ditch Day. She was there. There was a lot of times where there was the end of the year senior party, seniors only, right? And my mom was like, well, you can't go if Brooklyn can't go. Brooklyn was a junior, and that was hard for me, having to always have her there. And it wasn't that I didn't love my sister. It wasn't that I didn't care about her, but there were times when I just wanted to be Brylan without Brooklyn. I mean, if you go through our high school, kind of timeline there, you hear Brooklyn and Brylan Fields, Brylan and Brooklyn Fields, the Fields girls, Brooklyn, Brylan, Brooklyn. Like, we were always together. Everyone knew us as basically twins. That was the first question we got, and we always answered, nope, 13 months apart. I mean, we could have said a year and 1 month, but 13 months was just what came out of our mouth. So it was hard for me to not understand why she always had to be there. And I think that more often than not, I was mean to her for rules that my parents put in place. The other thing as an older sibling is, like, you're the older sibling, like, you want to be the best. You want to kind of be, or at least I did, wanted to kind of be in the foreground. But the truth is, besides being a friend and besides being the social person, when it came to sports, which is another area that we were really defined by, Brooklyn was a better athlete than me. Like, I was faster. She tried to keep up with me one time in football, and it was really funny because I knew that we had 2-300s.
Nobody told me.
She didn't know, and she, not that I was dogging the first one, but I knew there was another one. She didn't. So she tried to keep up with me, and that was a bad idea.
You don't have regrets in life, people. That was a regret.
So back to sports, and just, she was a better athlete than me. I was faster, but she just had this intensity in her. When you talk about on and off the fields, right? Like, on the field, the light bulb just went on for her. And she was an athlete. She was competitive through and through. Like, it didn't care if her best friend was on the other team. Like, no one would get in her zone. She played every single position in softball in the infield, first base, third base. She was an amazing catcher. She could have played short and second if that's where the team needed her. When it came to hitting, I mean, I hit home runs, but like, I'm sure that there's a ball that she hit back in the day that's still in the air somewhere, right? And so she just was naturally more talented than me. Like, if she chose it, well, I tried to be a shortstop one time until that first ground ball came at me, and I knew right away center field was it for me, buddy. I needed the grass to slow the ball down. I needed the reaction time. Like,
that was funny.
So yeah. So she played every position. I was a center fielder, you know. In basketball, I just didn't understand the concept of shooting. You know, I thought I was an okay shooter, but more than likely, if I shot it, they were screaming, "Bring it back!" Because it was just not gonna do what it should have done, right? And I could box out, I could do all the fundamental things, but she was just naturally better. And as the older sister, like, always having to try extra hard to be as good as your little sister, it sucked, you know. And I remember there was this one time, and I'm sensitive, so I might cry on some of these, but it was we were playing softball, and it was time for the next season to ask the coaches were going to let us know if they wanted us back on the team or not, right? And if they handed us a folded piece of paper, they didn't want us back. And if they handed us an unfolded piece of paper, it was kind of like your contract for the next year. And Brooklyn went first, and she got the contract for the next year, and I went in, and my paper was folded, right? And it was like, man, again, this area where she just excels. And I would be so angry with her, and as an older sister, just mean to her, right? And whoa, we're already crying on episode 3. And it was never really her fault, but growing up, no one ever really teaches you as a kid how to deal with emotions. You know, they don't teach you how to deal with the things that go on. And I mean, I feel super sorry for kids nowadays because there's such an expectation to be perfect, such an expectation for ACT and SAT and don't mess up and be perfect. And that's how it kind of felt having Brooklyn as my little sister. I just always had to try so hard. She talks about my vocabulary, and that's a learned trait. That's from lots of reading, and I started reading in personal growth a little bit before her. But the truth is I mean, before she kind of got a little bit crazy her junior and senior year, she was like a 4.0 student. She was like A's in math, A's in science, A's in English. It like A, like it could have been her nickname, and I wasn't. I think that there was a point where I almost didn't get to play softball my senior year. I probably had like a 1.2 GPA, and I don't know if that's exaggerating. It was pretty bad. And it wasn't that I didn't try. I didn't get it. It didn't click for me. So in all these areas where I tried so hard to be great, she was just naturally great. And as an older sister, I think that the one area that I was able to like win in was being her older sister. And that was only because I was born first, right? So I think that as an older sister, we forget that they sometimes feel like they're in the shadow because we're trying so hard to keep up with all the different things they're doing, right? We try so hard. I tried so hard to keep up with my little sister that was like outdoing me in everything. And I don't even think she realized it at that time, right? And so words, growing up, I didn't always use the nicest of words, but I think if there's anything that I could learn from the time of us growing up and being an older sister, it was just that as much as they feel like they're living in your shadow, there was areas where I often lived in hers, but I just tried to mask it. So, yeah.
So now, coming to an old saying, oh my gosh, you're 30. I'm almost 30. Now, how do you feel about being an older sister? What role do you feel like you have in my life, Mark's life, being an older sister in present day?
So, being a sibling in general, older, younger, twins, whatever that looks like, it is a blessing. It's an honor. It's a responsibility. It's this person that you share this bond with by blood, not because you chose to, but because that's what happened. Your parents did what they did. You know what they did. But
They did
not
their thing.
because of anything
Bumping
other than
uglies.
that's your sibling. And so I think now I take it a little bit more seriously in that I understand that the things that I do matter to my siblings, the things that I say, even the things that I don't say, right? We are about 90% nonverbal communication is like what they say. Maybe it's 93, 97, but it's a pretty high percentage of what type of communication is nonverbal. So they can see when I'm frustrated. They can see when I'm mad. And I've just really learned to, as their older sister, and even with my older sisters, I've learned to communicate with them in a way that I use my words more wisely, that I understand that they're coming from a different perspective than I'm coming from, right? My whole growing up, Brooklyn is in my shadow. Meanwhile, she's like the chip on my shoulder. So we're coming at life and from the same household, from the same sports, from the same teammate, but with a totally different perspective of one another. And so just trying to put myself in a position to understand, and this has been huge for me, that I am not always right, because I like to think that I am, but I'm not, that I'm not always right. That sometimes they might be coming to me for advice, not to hear me give them advice, but just to get it out for themselves. So as an older sister now, I know that I'm not competing with Brooklyn. You know, she's talked a lot about her journey, and I will dive into this a little bit further as we go forward in these series, but I'm not competing with her. I'm not competing with Mark. I'm not competing with Brienne or Tiffany or Marquetta or Brittany. I'm not competing with my siblings. I'm simply encouraging them. I was put in their life for a purpose, on purpose. They need me in a different way that I need them, and vice versa. So I think as an older sibling, just carry that mantle of responsibility, like with honor, and also with humility. I've learned a lot of humility in stepping back and hearing what she has to say from her perspective. Because a lot of the times when we were growing up, I was hearing what she had to say from a perspective of, I can't wait to tell her what to do next. And sometimes your siblings don't need that. They just need your big sister to listen to, and they just need your little sister to listen to, or your little brother, or your twin sister. So yeah, just taking the time to really hear. Listen for the sake of listening, not for the sake of responding.
True. And I think both last week's series and this week's series, what we came down to, like, I guess what we will agree on is how you communicate. Number one, it being listening. Listening to the intent to hear, not the intent to respond. That's huge in any relationship, especially a sibling relationship. I know a lot of times when you talk, something that they say, it triggers something that you want to say, so you're wrapped up on that one thing that they said 5 minutes ago, and you miss the whole conversation because you're ready to respond or retaliate or give advice to things that, you know, were said 5 minutes ago, and you stop listening to everything that they have to say. So more so hearing what people have to say and listening, especially siblings, and communication, how you talk, you know, have a word, you know. When we're frustrated, it's like, even now to this day, we'll have tiffs and spurts, and like, oh, I know you're frustrated, or oh, and so we cool off, or we'll say whatever, and then 5 minutes later, it's like either I initiate the apology or she initiates the apology, because we need that time to cool down, because most of the time, especially with the closest people you love, you'll take out your anger and frustration the most. In the outside world, you'll take it, put on a smile, whatever, but because the people you love the most know who you are and aren't going anywhere, you feel that you can do whatever you want, say whatever you want, and they're still going to be there, and that's not right either. So have a word or a phrase when you get angry with your siblings, or just
Pineapples!
Because she looks like one.
I need a minute.
Yep. Exactly. See, I need a minute. Take that time to cool off and relax, and take that time to separate and think logically. Our emotions sometimes get the best of us, and we'll outburst emotionally instead of logically or the right way. And I feel like that's been huge in our relationship and how we get along and how we can live together now. Us living together years ago didn't work. She sat on my face with a pillow. We won't get into that conversation.
Great, now the world knows I'm violent.
I kicked her in the mouth with braces, and her lip got stuck to her braces, and it was, yeah, that was the past. So now we're in the future.
I think we should wrap up episode 3.
Yeah, this was good. It was good, right?
We could do it over because I cried. If we want to just do the whole thing
No,
over.
real, raw, and regular.
Get your hand off.
Real, raw, and regular.
Real! I meant to like come
Yeah.
around.
She's so weird. Watch this. Watch this.
No!
She's so weird. I can't even kiss her on the cheek. And say I love you. She'll I love you.
Get out of here. Okay, we're gonna.
But we love each other, and this wraps up episode 3. And I hope it helped out. And I can't wait to see you episode 4. You'll never know what we're gonna talk about.
We're
We're still on.